Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate the Hate podcast. I am Will from wilksworld.com. This can be episode 62 of the Derate the Hate podcast, and thank you so much for joining me. This week being Father's Day week, I'm going to make this kind of a short episode, but I'm going to talk about being a father, how much being a father means to me. We're going to kind of revisit a couple older episodes that we've done, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a small book that I read to my daughter quite often. Anybody who's got toddler children probably understands how often they like to read or hear the book read to them, the same book over and over and over again. And there's a book this week that kind of stood out to me in my brain, and it made me think of a meme that I've seen quite often, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to say, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. We're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. So I have to ask, what have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? At the Derate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. And that all starts with you and how you are doing things in your life, how you are bettering your life in order to better the world. One of the best ways to do that, and one of the best ways to make the world a better place, is to make better children. And to make better children, we have to be better parents. Now, I lost my father 11 years ago. It was January 2010, and I was already in my mid-30s when I lost my father. And unfortunately, far too many children either grow up without a father, or their father is quite absent and is not a prominent figure in their life. Fortunately, I was very fortunate to have a father who was with me throughout my whole childhood and most of my early adult years, being able to give me guidance, being a phenomenal person that I could look to for life lessons and wisdom, and I was very fortunate in that fact. And I'll be honest, I did not start my family until much later in life. I didn't have. I became a step-parent in my early 40s, and I became a step-parent and a parent in my early 40s. And I have to tell you, one of the greatest honors that I've had in my entire life is becoming a father, being a father to my stepson, or being a stepfather to my stepson. And I just want to be very clear, his father is very much involved in his life, and we're thankful for that as well. But being a stepfather and then becoming a father to my young daughter, certainly the greatest honors of my lifetime. And I've talked in this podcast several times about things that we can do to become better parents, and being the role models and being the guiding lights for our children, to make our children better people and make the world a better place in that way. I talked in episode 42. If you haven't listened to episode 42, I talked about 10 lessons I will pass on to my children. That was a good episode, and there's a lot of good life lessons in there. Things that I will definitely and most definitely pass on to my children. Things that I institute on a daily basis. Things like gratitude and kindness and being sure of oneself and things like that. So I talk about 10 lessons I will pass on to my children in episode 42. And then there's been other episodes too where I've had guests that specialize in things having to do with children. But this week a couple things stood out to me that I really wanted to talk about, and this wasn't where I was going with this this week's episode. But with it being Father's Day, this past Sunday, and these things kind of if something hits me right during the week, I might mix it up. I might throw something else in there, and that's what I'm doing this week on this week's episode of Derate the Hate podcast. So, I've seen, and you've probably seen the meme too, where it says, "Do not buy all the things for your children that you wish you'd had, but teach all the things to your children that you wish you'd known." And that really stands out to me because, especially because I grew up as a very poor child. I was very poor, and quite honestly, it wasn't even until I was an adult where I started to really be able to enjoy certain things in life, because my parents just quite honestly, they're whether it was lack of opportunity or lack of whatever, we just did not have money. We did not have anything close to what people would call a privileged lifestyle, and so yeah, there was a lot of things that I grew up without. But one thing I did not grow up without was love, and I did have love. I had two parents that loved us dearly. I had parents that were all about teaching us good life lessons, and some of those things were taught the hard ways. But nothing about my childhood was really easy. So, anyways, a lot of the life lessons that I learned throughout my life were learned the hard way, whether watching my parents make the mistakes that they made, or me as an adult making poor decisions as an adult, and learning things the hard way as an adult. And that comes with a lot of pain. In my case, a lot of broken bones, a lot of pain, a lot of heartache, and a lot of things I'm not going to get into here. But the important thing is now that I've learned the lessons that I learned, and that's one of the advantages of starting a family later in life, is the fact that I did learn a lot of things. And a lot of the things that I learned that I'm passing on to my children are things that money can't buy. So let's talk real quick about this book that I was talking about that I read to my daughter. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many times I read this book to my daughter each week because, well, she's the boss. She decides what books we're going to read. She grabs the books. She brings them to me. We sit in the chair. We sit in the, whether it be the glider rocker up in her nursery room or the recliner down here in the living room, wherever the case may be, she grabs a book. She brings it to me. I can't resist. She bats her eyes at me, and I read the books, right? So Hush Little Baby. Everybody has probably heard, or most people have probably heard, the standard lullaby from when we were children. Hush, little baby, don't say a word, right? Hush, Little Baby. Well, there's a book by Sylvia Long. And Sylvia Long has written this unique little version of the Hush, Little Baby book. And instead of the hush little baby, don't say a word, mom's gonna buy you a this or that or whatever the other thing, Sylvia starts it off by saying, hush little baby, don't say a word, mama's gonna show you a hummingbird. And I was reading it the other day, and I was talking to my wife about it, and we just got into a conversation, and I started to realize that all of the things in this book are not things that money can buy, but things that mama's going to show the little baby, or a thing, an enlightening something that baby's going to get to experience. But it's things that money cannot buy, and it's experiences that mother and that daughter, in the case of this book, are going to share. And that's so important as a parent, is bringing those life experiences, but not necessarily things that money can buy, because there's so much. People like to talk so much today about being privileged and having the money to do this, and they try to equate everything to wealth or money, but it's really not about wealth and money. That's not where the real privilege is. The real privilege is having parents that care enough to do things with their children and bring those enlightening experiences and those things to a child's life that money just can't buy. So, I skipped to the last page of this little book by Sylvia Long, and I hadn't read it before because it wasn't part of the story that my daughter really enjoys. But after that conversation with my wife, I looked at the last page of this book, and it says, "A note from Sylvia Long. As much as I love being an artist, my favorite and most important profession has been being a mother. I sang and read to my children just as my mother sang and read to me. One of those songs that had bothered me as an adult is the original version of Hush Little Baby. In it, a mama offers her baby comfort by promising to buy him or her all sorts of things: a mockingbird, a diamond ring, a horse and a cart, etc. It seems much healthier to encourage children to find comfort in the natural things around them and the warmth of a mother's love. This belief was my inspiration for a new version, which I hope you will enjoy as much as I enjoyed creating it." Signed, Sylvia Long. Now, I want to go back to something I said earlier in this show, and that's that being a parent has certainly been the honor of my lifetime. And many of the life lessons that I can give to my children are life lessons that don't cost anything. It's just about being present as a parent and being present and providing that parental guidance that a child needs. And there's several episodes, like I said, there's several episodes where I've talked to different people who are doing incredible things in the realm of trying to reunite families, because we all know that one of the biggest problems that we face as a society today is homes without fathers. And there's nobody doing a better job and doing more of a saint's work in that fight towards reuniting families, and specifically, specifically black families. And we know that one of the most detrimental things in the black community is the lack of fathers. And episode 44, I talked to Kendall Qualls. I've mentioned that episode several times since then, because it is such an important topic to me, and in my opinion, such an important topic for us as a society, is the idea that we really need to reunite and reinvigorate, and in his words, in the words of Kendall Qualls, resurrect the American black family. And he's doing phenomenal work, and his movement, Take Charge Minnesota. If you haven't seen them lately on the television or in a news article or whatever, you're just not paying attention, because they are everywhere right now, and he's doing an incredible job. Another episode that I talked to Stephanie Pinto from Raising Emotionally Intelligent Kids. She talks about things we can do as parents to recognize and acknowledge the emotions in our children, and deal with those in different ways than we may be used to. And she's doing incredible work too. I spoke to her in episode 54. We talked about raising emotionally intelligent kids. So if you haven't listened to episode 54, step back and listen to my conversation with Stephanie Pinto and all the great things that she's doing with her organization, Raising Emotionally Intelligent Kids. And then one of my favorite conversations that I've had up to this point is talking to Ben Killoy. Ben Killoy in episode 57, he started off with his Bringing the Veteran Dad Home podcast, and then now he does a daily podcast too. I believe it's called The Dad Coach. I don't have it written down in front of me right now, but he does a daily podcast now, coaching dads, doing things, talking about being a better father. And the conversation that I had with Ben back in episode 57 was an incredible episode. And this is only a few of the episodes. A lot of what we do here on the Derate the 8 podcast is find people that are doing great things to better the world in their own way. They do just help people through different things that they're going through in their lives, and they're all a little bit different, but their all goal in the end is the same, and that's the same as the goal that we have here at the Derate the 8 podcast, and that's really about bettering the world and helping people to do things to better their own lives. And we all know, all the people that I'm talking to you about today are very well aware of the fact that as we help people to help themselves, as we do things to guide people in the right direction, to straighten things out, to straighten out problems in their lives, to straighten out mental hurdles that they're facing, doing different things, whether it be life tips or life coaching or just emotional intelligence skill sets. It's all about bettering yourself. Bettering yourself will end up bettering the world, and that's what we're all about. So just take this out of this episode, and take this out of so much that we're doing here, is being a parent is probably the most important role that any of us can ever play, and especially in passing along a better world. And it's not about the money. It's not about privilege. It's not about what color you are or where you're from or the things that you can buy for your children or give to your children. It's about what you can teach your children. What are the life lessons that are going to make your children better people? What is the value system that you want to instill in your children to leave a legacy of greatness? Because it's not about money. It's not about privilege. It's about the values that you place and the things that you do as a parent to make better children and leave better people on our planet. Don't buy into the nonsense about privilege based on race or think that everything you have to give your children has something to do with money. Just be a better parent. Be present. Be a present father. Be a good father. Instill good values in your children. And just be great. Just be great. And do it by being kind to one another. Be grateful for everything that you've got. And remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. With that, I just want to say, follow us wherever you get your audio. Please share us with your friends, subscribe to us, leave us some feedback. If you've got something to say to me, wilk@wilksworld.com is my email. And with that, I'm going to back on out of here. We'll catch you next week.